Today, we're going to be breaking down the best route runner in college football, and that is going to be Jimmy Horn Jr., who plays for the University of Colorado. So, this first example here is going to be a practice route from spring ball this past spring, and this just really showcases how explosive he is, how great he is at the top of the route and off the line of scrimmage, and why it's so hard to cover this guy in press man or just in general, any type of man-to-man coverage. So, he's going to be running this dig route. Now, off the line of scrimmage, I think anytime that I've seen this route been posted on social media or anything like that, everybody says, well, oh, because he slides off the ball, gives a move, then works to the inside and runs this dig, that route ultimately takes too long. And I think it will in different situations. So I just want to clear that up first. Like, this is probably not a first read dig. Like, there are different types of dig routes. There are different types of post routes. There are different types of routes in every single offensive scheme and offensive system. And also, there are different types of pass protection, right? So if a quarterback has like a single receiver out here and he has 7-man pass protection, the receiver could probably take a little bit longer with this route. Let's say, for example, the quarterback is working a concept. Let's say this is the center. Let's say this is where Jimmy Horn is lined up and he's running a dig, but he's working a concept on like the front side of the field, and this is the backside dig. So this dig has a little bit more time to ultimately develop. So that's the situation that we're in. But if we're in a situation, guys, where it's a dig route and then your slot receiver's running like a whip and you're reading this side of the field first, that dig probably has to be a little bit faster. So what he does is he comes off the ball and he uses something called a slide release, right? Which is where you slide to the outside, give a crossover, make this DB think that we're just sliding and taking off and going to the outside. This slide is very, very dangerous for a lot of receivers, especially receivers who have a ton of speed, because DBs are very over anxious, or at least don't want to get beat on that slide and go type release. I think everybody has probably seen, receivers like Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson. What they do is come off the ball and they slide to the outside. That DB stays patient to the inside, and then they just beat him over the top with speed. And so that's ultimately what we're trying to sell here. We slide, we give this little move, get that DB off his platform, and then we take this inside release on a dig. Now, on a dig, there are many different ways to cut on a dig. And the way Horn cuts right here is what makes him so difficult to cover, and what makes him the best route runner in college football is he's able to just stick one foot in the ground and get out. And this is called like a stick at the top of the break. There are a few different ways you could run a dig, right? You could use something called a speed cut, which is where it's not necessarily a hard cut. It's almost like you're just planting your foot and you're rounding up. It's like you break it 8 and then round up to 10. Not necessarily the best type of cut to use when you have man-to-man coverage, because if you drift, it makes it easier for the DB to recover. Now, also on a dig, you could drop your hips and just really sit down. They call that a square cut. Usually you start that break with your inside foot. Or what you could do, again, if you're more advanced like this, is just put one foot in the ground, stick, and then get out. Now, the key on every single route is we're trying to make this DB think that we're running what? We're trying to make him think that we're running a fade route, right? We want his hips, we want his shoulders committed to the opposite end zone, thinking we're going deep, so when we cut, we could separate. And the goal and the name of the game is getting separation, you guys. So when you're pushing up into this route, to be able to sell vertical, it's all about keeping 3 frequencies. A frequency of your body language, a frequency of your speed, and a frequency of your stride length. And by frequency, I literally just mean keeping it the same. So going all up into the break point, you see how his speed doesn't change. His body language doesn't change. His stride doesn't change, and he's able to cut while doing all 3 of those things. That's very, very tough to do. Now, when you cut doing those 3 things, the only way that you're going to be able to change direction is you got to shoot that foot into the grass. Like, if you're running routes and it's quiet outside, you should be able to hear your feet. Like, you want to hear your feet hit the ground. But when your feet hit the ground, you obviously got to strike the ground on the ball of your foot first. See, there's a lot of information out there about like knee injuries and foot strike and all that good, and receivers, it 100% matters. You do not want to step hard and run with that kind of speed and land on the ground with your heel first, because when your toe slaps down, that's a great way to hyperextend your knee and really hurt yourself. So we want to shoot that cleat into the grass. The ball of the foot should strike the ground first. Your whole foot can be down, obviously, because you're not going to be able to change direction otherwise, and then we want to push and drive off of there. But the more sudden you are with that cut, the easier it's going to be to change direction. So, guys, if you can add that to your repertoire, you're going to be a better wide receiver. But Jimmy Horn obviously is insanely explosive, insanely athletic, has a lot of ankle stability, a lot of single leg strength, which are things that wide receivers can work on to build on this, but that's ultimately how you would run it. And that's why he's so tough to cover, you guys, because it's very, very tough from a DB perspective if you don't have any wasted motion at the top of the route and you don't give away where you are running or when you're actually breaking going into the top of the route. So that's a textbook dig route there, using that stick with a single cut at the top of the break. So now we're going to be looking at another example of a practice rep where Jimmy Horn is going to be running a 10-yard out versus a DB who's like inside shade, maybe about like 5 yards away. And this is just a very, very smooth route. You see why, and again, with route running, it's not so much about like just pure speed, right? Like you see a lot of receivers like, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, they run great routes, but they're fast as hell. Jimmy Horn's fast as hell. But the thing that a lot of the best route runners all have in common is they're very smooth. They're very controlled with their movements. And this is a great example of that. But before we show you this, guys, if you're a wide receiver and you would like to train with us, or a quarterback and you would like to train with us this offseason, we are going to be coming out to 15 different cities across the country for 2-day long QB and wide receiver training camps this year. So check out, guys, that very first link in the description below. If you're local to any one of these cities we have listed on the screen here, we are going to be coming out to San Francisco, Orlando, Phoenix, Charlotte, Austin, Las Vegas, Seattle, Chicago, Newark, Birmingham, Houston, Boston, Columbus, Boise, and Los Angeles, California. So guys, check out that very first link in the description below if you're interested, if you'd like to come out to one of our 2-day long QB and wide receiver camps. Let's get back to this video. So now we're going to be talking about this out route, right? So anytime that we have, and I like this because this is kind of there's a good like point of view angle right here, especially from like a receiver perspective, is obviously we have a DB who's lined up inside shade about 5 yards away, and we got to go run an out route at about 10 to 12, right? So what a lot of people will do is that because he's inside shade, they'll just try to take off and go run around him. And the issue with that, guys, when you face a talented DB, maybe for you slot guys, you're facing a more physical DB. When you just try to run around him, that's exactly what he wants you to do. A DB who's inside shade of us wants to take away the inside route and force me to his help, which is the sideline. So if I have to run an outside break around, I can't just run straight towards the sideline. That's not enough room for the quarterback. What I have to do is I got to close the space with this DB. I got to go attack him. I got to bring the line of scrimmage to him, give him some type of move, but I want to run as tight as I possibly can to him and get vertical. They call that getting skinny, and this is a great example of that. So he comes off the ball, he attacks him, gets skinny right past his hips, so he gives the QB room to lead him. Guys, one of the best, like, all the great route runners, like all the great wide receivers, like you're only as good as your quarterback, right? And you want to make the quarterback's job so much easier than it needs to be, right? So if you can't give him space on routes, if you can't give him space to lead you, space to throw you open, spacing on certain plays so you can make a read, it's going to be tough to be a great receiver because you're not running quarterback-friendly routes. So obviously he runs at him, angles his stem right at that DB. Reason why we want to do that, you guys, is the best way to get a DB to move off his platform, to get him to move inside. The best way to do that, make him think you're running where he doesn't want us to go. So he's inside shade. He doesn't want us to go inside. Make him think we're going inside. That's the best way to get him to move, or at least hesitate. If we just get him to hesitate, then we'll be able to get space. So we get him to hesitate. Now, what Jimmy Horn could do right here very easily is, okay, I got him to hesitate and then just try to run around him. But again, guys, you take this wide angle on an out route, you're not giving your quarterback room to throw us open. So he attacks him, gives him a move inside, but watch where he's doing. He's going right past his hip to hip with this DB and getting vertical. So when he makes this cut, he's giving the quarterback as much room as possible. Now, obviously, he's got a ton of separation already, but if that DB's right on my hip and you give that quarterback that type of room, he could throw you open, you guys, the cliche phrase that everybody loves to talk about. So that's a great route right there. And you see how when he does this route, this is a true testament to how good of a player he is. You see how he doesn't break stride at all. There's no choppy steps. Everything is just smooth. He's just running, you guys. A lot of wide receivers will set up, different drills where they have a million different cones and receivers are taking all these choppy steps and doing all this stupid crap that doesn't apply. Guys, route running is played in open space, and you want to give yourself open space and give your quarterback open space. So when you're doing drill work, you're doing anything to work on your route running, you need to be running like you're in open space. You need to maintain your stride because your stride is what can get a DB to overreact, think we're doing something different, and ultimately leads to separation. So now, there's another example here. Jimmy Horn running a corner route versus a DB who's set up probably 5 yards head-up coverage. And but what he starts to do is he starts to backpedal. I think something that wide receivers... Because, okay, think about this pre-snap. How would you run, a 10-yard corner where you got to break at the 50 when you have a DB who's sitting at, 5 yards, right? What you would do is you would go attack him. You'd bring that line of scrimmage, just like the last example, right? You would take that line of scrimmage. You'd bring it to him. Since he's head up, he doesn't really have a leverage, so you would probably give him a fake inside to try to move him inside, take the outside release up to 10 to 12, and then go break to your corner, right? Now, something that all great route runners are able to do, and this is something you see at the next level with, guys like Jefferson, Adams, Garrett Wilson, they're able to react, and they're able to react on the fly, and they're able to react quickly. Because we talk a lot about like having a plan off the line of scrimmage, but I'd be a fool to tell you that that's all you're going to be able to do. Like, you have an inside leverage, okay, it's inside shade, and that's it. He's going to stay there. Sometimes DBs change what they're doing. Sometimes they disguise what they're doing, and this is a great example of a reaction from Jimmy Horn. So he comes off the ball, but you see how that DB starts to shade inside, starts to bail a little bit, so he doesn't quit on his route, right? He doesn't just say, okay, I'm going to run at him, give him a quick move, and leave all this space, and then go run to my corner, because then he's going to be able to cut off the angle. You guys, we always want to get to the DB's toes. If there's all this space between us and the DB, and let's say he just gives this inside move right now, and DB jumps, and then we got to go get up to 10 yards, he could cut us off the 10 yards, and he'll be right on my hip. It's all about angles, you guys. It's about getting hip to hip with the DB. But now, since we started to attack him and close the space, he started to bail, he started to shade inside. Okay, so now I'd run my corner a little bit differently. I wouldn't make my move at 5 and then outside release to 10. I would continue to attack his leverage. I would continue to push the route all the way up to 8 to 10, make him think I'm going inside, and then I could just go straight there. So remember, guys, all great route runners are able to react on the fly. If you see something pre-snap, you want to have a plan, but if he changes up his plan, I want to be able to react. That's why working different reactionary drills as a receiver, different reactionary situations is so important. So let's play this again full speed one more time. Great job by Horn reacting to that DB, changing up his catch man technique into an off man technique.